"You can take the storage room or move out," my dad told me when my sister suddenly arrived with her husband. "It would be great if you were out by the weekend," my sister Ashley added cheerfully. I stood there, stunned into silence. For 3 years, I had lived here, paying rent and taking care of our aging parents. Now, I was suddenly disposable. I moved out that weekend, but days later, her smug smile disappeared as panic took over. "He is lying? Dad, tell me he is lying." I never thought I would be living with my parents at 28. Life had other plans. When the tech startup I worked for collapsed 3 years ago, leaving me jobless with rent I could no longer afford. Moving back home was supposed to be temporary, but it evolved into something mutually beneficial. I paid them $600 monthly for rent, handled all the yard work my father could no longer manage with his arthritis, and drove my mother to her medical appointments after her knee surgery last year. The arrangement worked well for all of us. My parents, Gary and Linda Davidson, were beginning to face the challenges of aging. Dad, at 65, struggled with early arthritis that made maintaining our 2-story colonial house increasingly difficult. Mom, at 62, was still recovering from her second knee procedure and needed regular physical therapy sessions across town. Meanwhile, I had secured a stable position as an IT specialist at Norwich Systems, a local software company, and was steadily building my savings for a down payment on my own place. Then came the call that would upend everything. "Carmelo, guess who just called?" My mother burst into my room one Tuesday evening, her face lit with excitement. "Ashley is coming home. She says they need some family support right now." My stomach tightened at the mention of my sister. Ashley, 4 years my senior at 32, had always been the golden child. She excelled at everything: academics, sports, social life, while I was the quieter, more reserved sibling who found his place in computers rather than spotlight. The family dynamic was never explicitly stated but always clearly felt. Ashley was the star. I was the supporting cast. 5 years ago, she had married Troy Hamilton, a charismatic businessman who charmed our parents with stories of his investment ventures and market predictions. They moved to Charlotte for what Ashley described as amazing business opportunities, and their visits home became increasingly rare and brief. "Did she say why they need support?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Mom waved dismissively. "Oh, you know your sister. Always dramatic about the details. I am sure she will explain everything when they get here. They are arriving this Friday. Just 3 days' notice." Before I could process this, Mom added, "We should clean up your room for them. It has the best lighting and space for 2 people." "My room?" I felt a flash of indignation. "Where am I supposed to sleep?" "We will figure something out, honey. They are family. We have to support each other in times of need." That evening, I returned from work to find my parents already rearranging my bedroom furniture. Dad was dismantling my computer desk, while Mom stripped my bed linens. "I have not even agreed to this," I protested. Dad straightened up with visible effort, wincing as his back protested. "Carmelo, it is just temporary. Your sister and Troy need our help right now. We can put a bed in the storage room for you. It will be tight but workable." The storage room was a glorified closet off the laundry area, barely 8 feet by 6 feet, with no windows and a persistent smell of detergent. I wanted to argue further, but the hopeful expression on my parents' faces stopped me. This was classic Davidson family dynamics Ashley needs. Everyone accommodates. Friday arrived with unusual energy in the house. Mom had been cooking since dawn, preparing all of Ashley's favorite dishes. Dad had polished the good silverware, and even put on a button-up shirt instead of his usual flannel. I worked from home that day, my equipment temporarily set up in the dining room, trying to focus on code rather than my growing resentment. When the doorbell rang at 4 in the afternoon, my parents practically raced each other to answer it. I followed more slowly, steeling myself for the Ashley show. She looked immaculate as always, designer jeans, cashmere sweater, not a blonde hair out of place. Troy stood beside her, his tailored suit and gleaming watch screaming success. They had arrived in a brand new Audi SUV that now sat in our driveway, making my 7-year-old Honda look even more modest by comparison. "There is my baby girl." Dad engulfed Ashley in a bear hug, while Mom wiped away tears of joy. After the emotional greetings, Ashley turned to me with a practiced smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Carmelo, still living at home, huh? That is so sweet." I returned her hug stiffly. "Good to see you too, Ashley." Troy clapped me on the shoulder with confidence that bordered on condescension. "The IT guy, right? How is that going? Still good money in that field?" Before I could answer, Ashley was already steering the conversation elsewhere, talking about their exhausting drive and how much they needed this family time. Something felt off about her enthusiasm, too bright and brittle, but my parents were too delighted to notice. As we helped bring in their luggage an excessive amount for what was supposedly a short stay, I caught a glimpse of tension between Ashley and Troy. When she thought no one was looking, her smile vanished, replaced by a worried frown as she watched him unload an expensive leather briefcase from the car. At dinner, Ashley dominated the conversation with stories of their life in Charlotte charity galas, networking events, weekend getaways, while deflecting any specific questions about Troy's business or their sudden need for family support. My parents hung on every word, occasionally throwing me glances as if to say, "See what success looks like?" It was during dessert that Ashley dropped the first hint of their true situation. "We are actually between places right now," she mentioned casually, as if discussing the weather. "Our new house is not quite ready, and there were some complications with the closing on our condo. You can stay as long as you need," Mom assured her immediately. Troy nodded graciously. "It should only be a few weeks, just until some business matters settle down." I caught the quick glance between them, a warning from Ashley, a slight tightening around Troy's mouth. Something was definitely wrong in paradise, but they were working hard to maintain the facade. Later that night, as I was preparing for bed on the living room couch, my temporary arrangement until the storage room could be cleared, Dad approached me with an uncomfortable expression I had seen many times before. It was the same look he had when he told me they could not help with my college textbooks because Ashley needed a new laptop for her internship. "Son," he began, his voice low, "we need to talk about the sleeping arrangements. You can take the storage room or move out," Dad said with finality, not quite meeting my eyes. "Ashley and Troy need a proper space, and they will be using your room." I sat up on the couch, sleep forgotten. I thought this was temporary, just for tonight. "Well," Dad shifted uncomfortably, "it looks like they might need to stay longer than expected. They are family, Carmelo. They need our support right now." "I am family too," I reminded him, trying to keep my voice level. "I have been here for 3 years, helping out, paying rent. And we appreciate that," Dad said quickly. "But Ashley is going through something right now. She will not say exactly what, but a father knows when his daughter is troubled." Before I could respond, Ashley's voice floated from the hallway. "Sorry," could not help overhearing. She did not look sorry at all as she padded into the living room in silk pajamas that probably cost more than my weekly salary. "It would be great if you were out by the weekend," she added cheerfully. "Troy and I really need to settle in properly. This transition is so stressful for us." The casual cruelty of her statement left me speechless. Dad looked between us, clearly torn, but predictably yielding to Ashley's wishes. "The storage room is not ideal, but we could make it work," he offered weakly. I looked at the tiny space they were suggesting. No windows, barely enough room for a twin bed, and nothing else. My computer setup, books, and personal belongings would have nowhere to go. More than the physical discomfort, it was the symbolism that stung. I was being relegated to a closet to make space for the prodigal daughter. "I will find my own place," I said finally, a decision crystallizing in that moment. Give me a few days to figure things out. Ashley's smile brightened. Perfect. I knew you would understand. The next morning, I called in sick to work and began frantically apartment hunting. The rental market was tight, and anything decent required first and last month's rent plus security deposit, a significant chunk of my savings that I had earmarked for eventually buying my own home. By midday, reality was setting in hard. I would either need to drain my savings or find a roommate situation. Neither option appealed to me. But Ashley's smug presence in my former bedroom left no alternatives. I called my best friend Jake in desperation. They kicked you out for your sister? Jake's indignation on my behalf was comforting. That is seriously messed up, man. I need a place to crash for a couple weeks until I can find an apartment, I admitted, swallowing my pride. Jake did not hesitate. Our spare room is yours. Tara will be cool with it. She likes you better than me anyway. Relief flooded through me. I owe you big time. Bring your gaming rig, and we will call it even, Jake laughed. I spent the rest of the day packing my life into boxes and duffel bags. As I worked, Ashley occasionally drifted by my door. My former door, offering superficial help and thinly veiled excitement about redecorating. This room gets such beautiful morning light, she commented, already measuring the windows for new curtains. Troy and I are thinking of a complete makeover. Something more sophisticated. I bit my tongue and continued packing. Troy was less subtle in his dismissal of me. When he caught me carefully wrapping my computer monitors, he chuckled. All this tech stuff. Never understood the appeal myself. I prefer investments that actually grow in value. By Saturday morning, my car was packed to capacity. Mom made a show of being sad to see me go, packing containers of food and fussing over whether Jake's place would be comfortable enough. We will help you with the security deposit when you find a place, she promised, though we both knew that money would likely go to whatever Ashley and Troy needed instead. Dad helped me carry the last few boxes to my car, grunting with the effort. For a brief moment, as we stood in the driveway, I thought I saw regret in his eyes. You know we love you, son, he said gruffly. I know, Dad. The words came automatically, practiced over years of being second best. As I was closing my trunk, I realized I had forgotten my external hard drives in the desk drawer. Heading back upstairs, I found Troy rifling through my former desk, a folder of papers in his hands. Just checking if you left anything, he said smoothly, sliding the folder into his briefcase. Something about his manner raised alarm bells. I pretended not to notice as I retrieved my hard drives, but as he turned away, I caught sight of a document with what looked like federal letterhead partially visible from his hastily closed briefcase. Ashley appeared in the doorway, tension radiating from her despite her smile. All set? Great. Drive. Safe. Their eagerness to see me leave only deepened my suspicion that something beyond family support had brought them back home. As I pulled away from the house, I watched in my rearview mirror as Ashley and Troy stood arm in arm on the porch, the perfect picture of a successful couple. Only I had seen the document Troy had hidden, and the worried glances they exchanged when they thought no one was looking. Jake and Tara welcomed me with open arms and cold beer, their small but comfortable two-bedroom apartment already cleared to make space for me. Tara, a paralegal with a no-nonsense attitude I had always appreciated, had prepared the spare room with fresh sheets, and even a welcome sign that made me smile despite everything. This is temporary, I assured them, as we unloaded my car. 2 weeks max while I find a place. Stay as long as you need, Tara insisted. We are just glad to help. That night, as we sat around their living room with pizza and beers, I found myself recounting the events of the past few days, the hurt and confusion still fresh. Something is off with them, I concluded. They are acting like everything is perfect, but I caught Troy hiding some kind of official-looking document that he took from my desk. Tara frowned. Federal letterhead, you said? That could be anything from tax notices to legal proceedings. Whatever it is, they did not want me to see it, I said. And they were way too eager to get me out of the house. Jake took a thoughtful sip of his beer. You know what this calls for? What? Tara and I asked simultaneously. Reconnaissance. Jake grinned. Your sister kicked you out? Time to find out what she is hiding. Jake's suggestion of reconnaissance initially seemed like petty revenge, but the memory of that federal document nagged at me. The next morning, Sunday, while Ashley and Troy would likely be sleeping in, I drove back to my parents' house under the pretense of picking up mail I had forgotten. Mom welcomed me with surprise. Carmelo, we were not expecting you. Just need to grab some mail, I explained, casually glancing around. Are Ashley and Troy still asleep? They went out for brunch, Mom said. Something about meeting potential investors in the area. Perfect timing. Mind if I grab a shower while I am here? Jake's water pressure is terrible. Once upstairs, I hesitated outside my old room. This felt invasive, but the protective instinct I had always felt toward my parents pushed me forward. If Ashley and Troy were in some kind of trouble, my parents could be dragged into it unwittingly. The room had already been transformed. My simple furnishings pushed aside for their designer suitcases and clothing. Troy's briefcase was nowhere in sight. He likely kept it with him, but several boxes Ashley had brought were stacked in the closet. I recognized one immediately, a storage box she had asked me to hold on to about 6 months ago when she visited briefly without Troy. Just some old college papers, she had claimed. Our place is being renovated, and I do not want them getting lost. The box was unsealed now, and instead of college papers, it contained financial documents, investment prospectuses, bank statements, and what appeared to be client lists. One folder was labeled Hamilton Venture, Capital Investor Documentation. Inside were copies of investment contracts with sticky notes attached. Many had notes like, no paperwork filed or unregistered. My blood ran cold as I began to understand what I was looking at. Troy's business dealings appeared highly irregular at best, potentially fraudulent at worst. I snapped quick photos with my phone, making sure to capture the most concerning pages. As I was replacing the documents, I heard the front door open. Hastily closing the box, I stepped out of the bedroom just as Ashley's voice floated upstairs. Carmelo. Her surprise quickly morphed into suspicion. What are you doing here? Forgot some mail. I held up the envelopes Mom had given me and wanted to use a real shower. Jake's apartment has terrible water pressure. She studied me intently, looking for signs of deception. Were you in our room? Your room? I could not resist the jab, just passing by. Nice redecorating job already. Troy appeared behind her, his charming smile firmly in place, though his eyes were watchful. Carmelo. Missing home already? Just grabbing some things, I said casually. How was brunch? Mom mentioned you were meeting investors. A flicker of tension passed between them. Just some preliminary discussions, Troy said smoothly. Nothing concrete yet. I nodded and made my exit as naturally as possible. But I could feel their eyes on me until I drove away. Back at Jake's apartment, I showed him and Tara the photos I had taken. This looks sketchy as hell, Tara said, her paralegal training evident as she analyzed the documents. These investment contracts, the language is deliberately misleading. And these notes about unfiled paperwork? Red flags everywhere. We need to do more research, Jake suggested, pulling out his laptop. Let me see what I can find on Hamilton Venture Capital. What we discovered over the next few hours confirmed my worst fears. Troy's company had virtually no online presence beyond a sleek but information-poor website. The few reviews we found were polarized, some glowing testimonials that seemed suspiciously similar in language, and some scathing complaints about unreturned calls and missing statements. More concerning was a business news article from 3 months ago, mentioning Hamilton Venture Capital as part of a broader investigation into potentially fraudulent investment schemes targeting high net worth individuals in the Cambrian Southeast. This looks like a classic Ponzi scheme, Tara concluded grimly. He takes money from new investors to pay returns to earlier ones, while skimming plenty off the top for himself. My stomach churned with anxiety. And now that the heat is on in Charlotte, they have come running home to hide out and possibly rope my parents into this mess. The next day, I called in sick again and contacted an old colleague, Natalie Parker, who now worked in the Financial Crimes Division of the State Attorney's Office. We met for coffee, and without revealing my family connection, I asked hypothetical questions about investment fraud investigations. These investigations can take months or even years, Natalie explained. But when they move to the active phase, things happen quickly. Assets get frozen, offices get raided, arrests are made. And what about family members who might unknowingly be harboring the fraudsters? I asked, trying to sound casual. Natalie gave me a shrewd look. They could face questioning, especially if their names appear on any financial documents, or if they have benefited from the fraud. In some cases, they could even be considered accessories after the fact, if they knowingly help the perpetrators hide assets or evade authorities. My blood ran cold. Even elderly parents who might not understand what they are signing? Carmelo. Natalie set down her coffee cup. Is there something specific you need to tell me? This sounds personal. I hesitated, torn between family loyalty and doing what was right. Not yet, I finally said. But I might need your help soon. That evening, my mother called, sounding distressed. Carmelo. Honey, do you think you could come for dinner on Sunday? Your father and I have some exciting news to share, and the whole family should be together. The forced cheerfulness in her voice sent warning signals blaring through my mind. What kind of news, Mom? Oh, I should not say yet, but Troy has presented us with an amazing opportunity. Your father is so excited, you know how he has always worried about having enough for retirement. My heart sank. I will be there, Mom. Definitely. After hanging up, I paced Jake's living room, anxiety mounting. They are going to invest with Troy. I can feel it. Then we need more concrete evidence before Sunday, Tara said decisively. Something your parents cannot ignore. The next day, I received an unexpected call from a number I did not recognize. Is this Carmelo Davidson? A formal voice inquired. Yes. Speaking. This is Thomas Wilson from First National Bank. I am trying to reach your father, Gary Davidson, regarding a loan application he has co-signed, but his phone seems to be going to voicemail. He listed you as an alternate contact. My grip tightened on the phone. A loan application? I was not aware my father was applying for a loan. Not directly, sir. He and Linda Davidson are listed as guarantors on a business loan application for Hamilton Venture Capital. I was hoping to clarify some details about their listed assets. I managed to keep my voice steady. When was this application submitted? Just yesterday, sir. Is there a better time to reach your parents? I will let them know you called, I promised, then added, out of curiosity, what is the amount of the loan? The banker hesitated. I really should discuss that with the applicants. But since they listed you as a contact, it is for $750,000, with their home listed as collateral. After the call ended, I sat in stunned silence. Not only were Ashley and Troy running from trouble in Charlotte, they were actively dragging my parents deeper into their scheme, potentially putting my parents' house, their largest asset, at risk. The puzzle pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was more disturbing than I had imagined. Sunday dinner could not come soon enough. Sunday arrived with a sense of foreboding. I had spent the intervening days gathering as much information as possible about Troy's business dealings, leveraging Natalie's hints and Tara's legal expertise. What emerged was a clear pattern of fraudulent activity. Troy had been running an investment scheme promising unrealistic returns, using new investor money to pay earlier investors while siphoning millions for his and Ashley's lavish lifestyle. As I pulled into my parents' driveway, I noticed Troy's Audi had been joined by a second luxury car, a red Corvette that screamed midlife crisis. Inside, the atmosphere was festive. Mom had prepared an elaborate Sunday roast, and Dad had opened a bottle of expensive champagne that I suspected was a gift from Troy. There he is. Dad beamed as I entered, unusually animated. Troy and Ashley sat at the dining table looking like the picture of success, while my parents bustled around them like eager servants. Just in time for the big announcement, Troy said with a wink. Throughout dinner, Troy regaled us with stories of successful investments and satisfied clients, painting himself as a financial wizard who could turn modest sums into fortunes. Ashley supported his claims with enthusiastic nods and occasional additions, though I noticed she drank more champagne than usual, her laughter becoming increasingly brittle. Finally, Dad cleared his throat for the big announcement. "Your mother and I have been thinking about our future," he began, glancing adoringly at Troy. "We have always been conservative with our money, maybe too conservative. When Troy showed us the returns his clients are getting well, it just makes sense." My stomach tightened. "What makes sense, Dad?" Mom jumped in excitedly. "We are investing with Troy. He is going to help us grow our retirement fund so we can finally take those trips we always talked about." "How much are you investing?" I asked, fighting to keep my tone neutral. Dad hesitated, then squared his shoulders. "We are putting in $300,000, our entire retirement savings, plus taking a loan against the house for additional investment capital." The room seemed to spin around me. It was worse than I had feared. "Troy has assured us we will see 15 to 20% returns annually," Mom added, as if this was perfectly reasonable rather than a glaring red flag. "That seems unusually high," I observed, watching Troy's reaction. "Most legitimate investments offer far lower returns." Troy's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Most investment managers do not have my connections or strategies. I can guarantee those returns because I have consistently delivered them." "No investment returns can be guaranteed," I countered, years of personal finance research coming to my aid. "The SEC specifically prohibits guaranteeing returns because all investments carry risk." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Ashley laughed nervously, touching Troy's arm. "What my brother means is that while nothing in life is certain, Troy's track record speaks for itself." "Exactly." Troy nodded, but I caught the warning glance he shot at Ashley. "Perhaps Carmela would like to see some of our prospectuses and client testimonials?" I brought them specifically because I anticipated some healthy skepticism. After dinner, Troy led me to the living room where he had arranged an impressive display of charts, graphs, and testimonials. Everything looked professional and convincing to an untrained eye. My parents hovered nearby, clearly having already bought into the scheme. "These clients are averaging 18% returns over 3 years. Troy pointed to a particularly impressive chart. "Many started with amounts similar to what your parents are investing. May I see the SEC registration for your fund?" I asked innocently. Troy's smile did not waver, but his eyes hardened. "We operate under a different regulatory structure that provides more flexibility. That is part of how we generate superior returns." "I see." I nodded, pretending to be impressed while noting another red flag. "And are my parents' investments protected by SIPC insurance?" "We use alternative protection mechanisms," Troy replied smoothly. "More comprehensive than those outdated government programs." Before I could ask another pointed question, Ashley intervened, pulling me toward the kitchen. "Help me with dessert, Carmelo." In the kitchen, her cheerful facade dropped immediately. "What are you doing?" she hissed, eyes flashing with anger. "Protecting our parents," I replied evenly. "Ashley, what have you gotten them into?" "Nothing. Troy is helping them secure their future. Something you have not exactly stepped up to do, by putting their house at risk? Their entire retirement savings?" A flicker of guilt crossed her face before her defenses slammed back into place. "Troy knows what he is doing. The business had some temporary cash flow issues in Charlotte. That is all. Everything will stabilize once we secure new investment capital. Is that what we are calling it now? Not fraud, just cash flow issues? Ashley paled. Keep your voice down. And stop asking questions. You are not a financial expert, Carmelo. You fix computers for a living, which gives me enough knowledge to recognize when something is not right, I retorted. What happens when the authorities catch up to Troy? Have you thought about what that means for Mom and Dad? For a moment, Ashley's carefully constructed facade cracked. Fear flashed in her eyes, quickly replaced by defensive anger. Nothing is going to happen because there is nothing wrong. Stop trying to ruin this for everyone just because you are jealous of our success. Before I could respond, she composed herself, plastered on a smile, and carried the dessert tray back to the dining room. The rest of the evening was tense beneath the surface pleasantries. I watched Troy continuing to charm my parents, who were already envisioning the comfortable retirement his guaranteed returns would provide. Ashley maintained her supportive wife role, though I caught her throwing back several more glasses of wine when she thought no one was looking. As the evening wound down, Troy cornered me in the hallway, his friendly demeanor firmly in place but his eyes cold. I could use someone with your technical skills on my team, Carmelo, he offered, voice lowered conspiratorially. The pay would be significant. Enough to get you out of your friend's spare room and into a very nice place of your own. Thanks, but I am happy where I am. Troy stepped closer. I could also use some help retrieving certain documents from the storage boxes Ashley left with you. Nothing important, just some old files we need for tax purposes. The directness of his approach confirmed my suspicions. Troy was worried about what might be in those boxes, evidence that could implicate him, and possibly Ashley in his schemes. I will check what I have, I said noncommittally. Troy smiled. All teeth and no warmth. Great. Let us say 50,000 for your assistance? Just between us, of course. The bribe offer was the final confirmation I needed. No legitimate businessman offers that kind of money for old tax documents. As I was leaving, Ashley pulled me aside for one final warning. Stay out of our business, Carmelo. Troy is trying to help this family help our parents. Do not ruin this with your paranoia and jealousy. I looked into my sister's eyes, searching for the girl who had once taught me to ride a bike and defended me from neighborhood bullies. All I saw was fear masked by desperate ambition. I love you, Ashley, I said quietly. But if Troy is putting our parents at risk, I will not stand by and watch it happen. Her expression hardened. Then you are not welcome in this family anymore. I mean it, Carmelo. Stop asking questions, or you will regret it. I left with a heavy heart, more certain than ever that my parents were being drawn into something dangerous. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of Ashley and Troy through the living room window. The perfect couple image had slipped. They were arguing intensely, Ashley gesturing frantically while Troy's face was set in cold anger. The facade was beginning to crack. I just hoped I could expose the truth before my parents lost everything. The next morning, I called in sick to work again, my third absence in 2 weeks. My boss was understanding, but concerned. Everything okay, Carmelo? This is not like you. Family emergency, I explained vaguely. I should be back on track by tomorrow. Take the time you need, he said. But keep me posted. With a day to think clearly, I faced an agonizing decision. The evidence I had gathered strongly suggested Troy was operating a Ponzi scheme that was beginning to collapse. My sister, whether initially an unwitting participant or not, was now clearly complicit. And my parents were about to invest their entire financial future in this fraud. I could confront them directly with what I knew, but Sunday's dinner had proven they were too enchanted by Troy's promises to listen to my warnings. I could go to the authorities, but that would mean actively participating in the prosecution of my own sister and brother-in-law. The third option felt like betrayal, but offered the best chance of protecting my parents. I could provide an anonymous tip to the Financial Crimes Division, giving them enough information to accelerate their investigation before my parents' money disappeared into Troy's scheme. I called Natalie, asking to meet urgently. Over coffee at a quiet cafe far from both my parents' house and Jake's apartment, I finally shared the full story. Natalie's expression grew increasingly grave as I laid out the evidence I had gathered, the documents I had photographed, Troy's non-existent SEC registration, the guaranteed returns promises, and now the loan against my parents' house. This is textbook securities fraud, she confirmed. And based on what you are describing, the investigation is already underway. These operations typically collapse once the perpetrator can no longer find new investors to pay the promised returns to earlier ones. What happens to my parents if they invest? I asked, dreading the answer. Best case, they lose their money when the scheme collapses or assets are frozen by investigators. Worst case, if they become active recruiters bringing in other investors, they could face legal consequences themselves. I closed my eyes, the weight of the situation crushing down on me. And my sister? Natalie's voice softened. If she is actively participating recruiting investors, making false statements, she could face charges. If she can prove she was misled by her husband, the consequences might be less severe. What should I do? Officially, I cannot advise you on family matters, Natalie said carefully. But speaking as your friend, I would recommend doing whatever you can to prevent your parents from transferring that money. Once it enters Troy's accounts, recovering it becomes much more difficult. I nodded, resolve hardening. And unofficially? If someone wanted to provide information that might help your investigation? Natalie slid a business card across the table. There is an anonymous tip line. Any evidence submitted is evaluated on its merits, regardless of the source. That afternoon, I made one of the hardest calls of my life, providing detailed information to the Financial Crimes Anonymous tip line. I disguised my voice and did not leave my name, but I shared everything I had discovered about Troy's operation, including the documents I had photographed and the loan application using my parents' house as collateral. The weight of betrayal sat heavy in my chest, but I reminded myself that my primary responsibility was protecting my parents from financial ruin. Ashley had made her choices. I could only hope that she would cooperate with authorities when the time came and minimize her own involvement. The next hurdle was finding a permanent place to live. Jake and Tara were incredibly supportive, but I could not impose on them indefinitely. I spent hours browsing rental listings, finally finding a modest one-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes from work. It would require using most of my savings for the security deposit and first month's rent, but I needed stability to face what was coming. I signed the lease that Thursday, feeling a bittersweet sense of independence. This was not how I had planned to leave my parents' home forced out by my sister, racing to secure housing before a financial storm hit our family, but it was a necessary step. Jake helped me move my meager possessions from his spare room to my new apartment that weekend. The place was small but clean, with good natural light, and enough space for my computer setup and essential furniture. I would need to buy a bed and other basics, further depleting my savings. But it was worth it for the security of having my own place. You did the right thing, Jake assured me as we arranged my desk in what would serve as both living room and home office. Your parents will understand eventually. I hope so, I said. But doubt gnawed at me. What if they never forgave me for turning on Ashley and Troy? Sunday arrived again, marking 1 week since the dinner where my parents had announced their disastrous investment plans. I had been avoiding their calls, unsure what to say, without revealing that I had reported Troy to the authorities. But when Mom texted asking me to come for dinner again, to finalize some paperwork, I knew I could not delay any longer. I arrived to find the family gathered in the dining room, a stack of official-looking documents on the table. Troy sat at the head, playing the role of financial advisor, while Ashley hovered nearby, her smile fixed but her eyes nervous. My parents looked excited, completely unaware of the disaster they were walking into. Just in time, Troy greeted me warmly, though his eyes remained cold. We were about to go through the final investment paperwork. I took a deep breath. Before you sign anything, I need to speak with you all. Especially you, Mom and Dad. Troy's smile faltered slightly. We have all the details covered, Carmelo. No need to worry your parents with technical questions. Actually, there is every need, I countered, then turned directly to my parents. I have reason to believe Troy's investment firm is under federal investigation for fraud. The room went silent. Troy's face hardened, while Ashley gasped. My father frowned in confusion. That is ridiculous, Troy scoffed. Carmelo is clearly jealous of our success. Carmelo. How could you say such a thing? Mom looked shocked and hurt. Because it is true, I insisted. Troy's business shows all the classic signs of a Ponzi scheme. The unrealistic guaranteed returns, the lack of proper registration, using new investor money to pay earlier investors while skimming millions for personal use. These are serious accusations, Dad said, looking troubled for the first time. Troy stood abruptly. This is absurd. I will not sit here and be insulted in your home. Then explain the federal documents I saw you hiding, I challenged. Explain why you offered me $50,000 to retrieve certain papers from Ashley's storage boxes. Explain why you are having my parents take out a loan against their house when your business supposedly manages millions in assets. Ashley moved to Troy's side, but I caught the uncertainty in her eyes. Carmelo is making this up, she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. I turned to my sister directly. Ashley, I found the box of documents you asked me to store. I saw the notes about unfiled paperwork and unregistered investments. How long have you known what Troy was doing? Her face paled, and for a moment I thought she might confess. Instead, she rallied, her expression hardening. You went through my private property? How dare you? To protect our parents, I said firmly. Which is more than you seem willing to do. Troy put his arm around Ashley possessively. We are done here. Gary, Linda, I will call you tomorrow when everyone has calmed down. We can proceed with the paperwork then. Dad looked between us, confusion evident. Perhaps we should take some time to consider everything. There is nothing to consider, Troy said sharply, then caught himself and softened his tone. But of course, take all the time you need. The opportunity will still be there. As Troy gathered the paperwork, I made one last appeal to my sister. Ashley, if you know something, now is the time to come forward. Voluntary cooperation looks better than being caught. Her eyes met mine briefly, and I saw naked fear before she looked away. You have no idea what you are talking about, she said shakily. Stay away from us. After they left, an uncomfortable silence fell over the dining room. My parents looked shell-shocked, trying to reconcile the charming son-in-law they thought they knew with my accusations. Carmelo, Dad finally said, those are very serious claims. Troy has shown us documentation of his success. Fabricated documentation, I insisted. Dad, no legitimate investment consistently returns 15 to 20% annually. It is mathematically impossible over the long term. Mom wiped away tears. Why would Ashley be involved in something illegal? She has always been so sensible. I do not know when or how she got involved, I admitted. Maybe she did not know at first. Maybe she chose to ignore the signs because she enjoyed the lifestyle. But I believe she knows now, and she is choosing to protect Troy rather than you. My parents exchanged troubled glances, doubt finally beginning to creep in. What should we do? Dad asked, his usual certainty wavering. First, do not sign anything or transfer any money to Troy's business, I urged. Second, I think you should speak to a financial advisor, a legitimate one with proper credentials about your retirement options. They agreed, though I could see they were still torn between believing their golden daughter and their warning son. As I was leaving, Dad walked me to my car. Your new apartment, is it decent? He asked awkwardly. It is small but nice, I assured him. I am making it work. He nodded, looking older and more vulnerable than I had ever seen him. I am sorry about how that happened. With you having to move out so suddenly. It was the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get, and I accepted it with a nod. I understand, Dad. You thought you were helping Ashley. We have always tried to do right by both of you, he said, sounding uncertain for perhaps the first time in my life. I know, I said, and meant it. My parents had always loved us both, even if their approach had been unbalanced. That is why I am trying to protect you now. As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror to see Dad standing in the driveway, looking lost and confused. The family dynamic had been irrevocably altered, and none of us knew what would come next. Back at my new apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and minimal furniture, I received a text from Ashley. You have no idea what you have done. Stay out of our lives. I did not respond. There was nothing more to say until the truth finally came to light. 3 days later, my phone lit up with a breaking news alert. Financial authorities raid offices of Hamilton Venture Capital amid fraud allegations. Accompanying the headline was a photo of federal agents carrying boxes of documents from a glass and chrome office building in Charlotte. My heart raced as I scanned the article. The investigation had been ongoing for months, the report stated, with allegations that Troy Hamilton had defrauded investors of nearly $12 million through an elaborate Ponzi scheme. Assets had been frozen, and authorities were searching for Hamilton, who had not been present during the raid. I knew exactly where he was. Before I could decide what to do, my phone rang, my father's number flashing on the screen. Carmelo. His voice was tight with panic. Are you watching the news? About Troy? I just saw it, Dad. Are you and Mom okay? Troy and Ashley are here. Troy is saying it is all a misunderstanding, that competitors are trying to ruin him. He wants us to transfer the money today, before his accounts are temporarily frozen by this baseless investigation. Should we believe him? My blood ran cold. Troy was making a last desperate grab for cash before fleeing. Absolutely not, Dad. Do not give him a cent. I am on my way over. Call the police if he tries to leave with anything valuable. The police? Dad sounded shocked. He is family. Dad. He is trying to steal your retirement money before he runs. Please trust me on this. I heard shouting in the background, Troy's voice. Then Ashley's, rising in pitch. I have to go, Dad said hurriedly. Please come quickly. I broke every speed limit driving to my parents' house, calling Natalie on the way to alert her that I knew Troy's whereabouts. She promised to contact the investigating agents immediately. When I pulled up to the house, Troy's Audi and the red Corvette were both in the driveway, loaded with suitcases and boxes. I was barely out of my car when I heard shouting from inside. I burst through the front door to find a scene of chaos. Troy was arguing furiously with my father in the living room, while my mother sobbed on the couch. Ashley stood to the side, looking pale and frightened. You have no right to deny me access to those accounts, Troy was shouting. We had an agreement. The agreement was based on lies. Dad shot back with more backbone than I had ever seen him show to Ashley or Troy. I saw the news, Troy. They are saying you stole millions. Troy caught sight of me, and his expression darkened. You. This is your fault. Step away from my parents, Troy, I said, trying to project calm I did not feel. The authorities have been notified that you are here. Troy. We need to go, Ashley urged, pulling at his sleeve. Now. Before they come. Not without the money, Troy snarled, turning back to my father. Sign the transfer, Gary. Right now. Dad straightened his shoulders. No, I will not be part of whatever you have done. Troy's face contorted with rage as he took a menacing step toward my father. I moved between them instantly. Touch him, and I will make sure assault charges are added to your fraud counts, I warned. Troy glared at me, calculation replacing anger, as he realized his position was deteriorating by the second. Fine, we are leaving. Ashley, get the car started. As they moved toward the door, I noticed Troy clutching a small bag that clinked with the unmistakable sound of jewelry. "Mom's jewelry?" I asked, incredulous. Mom gasped, finally noticing what Troy was carrying. "Those are my mother's pieces. My anniversary presents from Gary." Troy shrugged unapologetically. "Consider it payment for financial consultation." Something in me snapped. I lunged forward, grabbing the bag from his hands. "You are not taking family heirlooms to fund your escape." Troy reacted with unexpected violence, shoving me hard against the wall. "Give it back," he demanded, reaching for the bag. I held firm, anger giving me strength. "Get out of our house before the police arrive." Ashley pulled desperately at Troy's arm. "Please, let it go. We need to leave." For a moment, it seemed Troy might escalate the confrontation further, but the sound of distant sirens changed his calculation. With a final venomous glare, he headed for the door, Ashley trailing behind him like a shadow. "This is not over," he threatened. "It is for you," I replied evenly. As they reached the door, my father found his voice again. "Ashley, wait. Do not do this. If you leave with him now," after knowing what he has done. Ashley paused, torn between the life she had built with Troy and the family she was abandoning. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the sister I had once known, uncertain, vulnerable, human. "He is lying," she insisted, but her voice wavered. "Troy says it is all a misunderstanding. Is that why you are running?" I asked gently. "People innocent of wrongdoing do not flee with suitcases full of cash and stolen jewelry." Ashley's eyes filled with tears. "You do not understand. I had no choice." "You always have a choice," Dad said, his voice breaking. "Stay, Ashley. Face this with your family." Troy, already halfway out the door, turned back with a sneer. "She knew everything. Gary, your perfect daughter, has been helping me recruit investors for years. She is as guilty as I am." The room went silent. Ashley's face crumpled as her husband's betrayal hit home. "He is lying," she whispered, looking desperately at our parents. "Dad, tell me he is lying." Dad could not respond, shock rendering him speechless. Mom's sobs grew louder. Troy laughed coldly. Ashley kept the books, prepared the falsified returns. She knew exactly what we were doing with the money. "How do you think she paid for those designer clothes and luxury vacations? Your daughter is no victim." With that parting shot, he turned and strode toward his Audi. Ashley remained frozen in the doorway, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. The sirens grew louder. Blue and red lights appeared at the end of our street. "It is over, Ashley," I said quietly. "You need to decide right now which side of this you are on." For a terrifying moment, I thought she would run after Troy. Instead, she crumpled to the floor. Years of pretense and denial, finally giving way to the truth. "I did not know at first," she sobbed. "I swear I did not. But then I saw the accounts, the way he moved money around, and I just closed my eyes. I did not want to lose everything." Outside, Troy saw the approaching police cars and made a break for his vehicle. He barely made it 2 houses down before police cruisers boxed him in from both directions. Inside, our family circled around Ashley, not to comfort her. Not yet, but to contain the damage she had helped create. Mom lowered herself to the floor beside her daughter, not touching her but present nonetheless. Dad stood nearby, grief etched into every line of his face. I positioned myself by the door, ensuring Ashley did not make a last-minute dash for freedom. Within minutes, federal agents arrived alongside local police. Troy was already in custody, and now they had come for Ashley. As they read her rights and led her away in handcuffs, she looked back at us one last time. "I am sorry," she whispered, though whether to us or herself, I could not tell. After the authorities left with Ashley, the house fell into a heavy silence. My parents sat side by side on the couch, holding hands like survivors of a natural disaster. "We almost gave him everything," Dad said hoarsely. "Our savings, our home, but you did not," I reminded him gently. "You stopped when you saw the truth." Mom looked up at me, her eyes red from crying. "How did we not see it? How were we so blind?" The question hung painfully in the air. We all knew the answer. They had seen what they wanted to see in Ashley and Troy, the successful daughter and charming son-in-law who represented all their dreams for their children. "What happens now?" Dad asked. "Now we pick up the pieces," I said, sitting across from them. Together. The months following Troy and Ashley's arrests were some of the most difficult our family had ever faced. My parents struggled with the dual trauma of nearly losing their financial security and having their daughter facing criminal charges. The community gossip was relentless, and friends they had known for decades suddenly became distant. Unsure how to react to our family's public disgrace, I moved back home temporarily to help them navigate the aftermath. My new apartment lease was not up for another 10 months, creating a financial burden I could barely afford. But my parents needed support more than I needed savings. They had aged years in mere weeks, the stress etching new lines into their faces and dimming the light in their eyes. The legal proceedings moved with excruciating slowness. Troy, facing multiple federal charges of securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering, maintained his innocence despite overwhelming evidence. He attempted to place all blame on Ashley, claiming she had orchestrated the financial operations while he was merely the face of the company. Ashley, confronted with the reality of potentially decades in prison, eventually accepted a plea deal in exchange for her testimony against Troy. She had indeed kept the books and helped recruit investors, but evidence supported her claim that Troy had been the architect of the scheme, with Ashley becoming complicit only after the operation was well established. Her cooperation earned her a reduced sentence, 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release, along with significant financial penalties. It was still a devastating outcome, but far less than the 15 to 20 years she might have faced otherwise. My parents attended every hearing, sitting silently in the back of the courtroom as their daughter admitted to her crimes. I went with them when I could, taking days off work to provide moral support during the hardest moments. "We raised her better than this," Mom whispered during one particularly difficult testimony where Ashley described helping Troy falsify investment returns. "Where did we go wrong?" "You did not go wrong," I assured her, though in private moments, I wondered if their clear favoritism had contributed to Ashley's desperate need to maintain her golden child status, regardless of the moral cost. The financial fallout was substantial. Although my parents had not ultimately invested their retirement savings with Troy, they still faced legal fees and the emotional toll of supporting Ashley through her prosecution. Dad, determined to help with her defense, initially consulted expensive attorneys until it became clear we could not afford them. Instead, we found a competent public defender who worked diligently on Ashley's behalf. I committed most of my savings to helping my parents stay afloat during this period, paying for groceries, utilities, and other expenses so they could focus on the legal matters. My boss, understanding the family crisis, allowed me flexible hours to attend court dates and meet with lawyers. 6 months after the arrests, Troy was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. The judge, noting his lack of remorse and his attempts to manipulate others, including my sister, imposed the maximum sentence allowed under the guidelines. Ashley, already serving her reduced sentence, testified against him via video conference, unable to meet his eyes even through a screen. With the criminal proceedings concluded, we faced the challenge of rebuilding our lives. My parents' house, though not lost to Troy's schemes, required significant maintenance that had been deferred during the crisis. Dad's arthritis had worsened from stress, limiting his ability to handle even basic repairs. One Saturday morning, I arrived with Jake and several other friends to tackle the most pressing projects: a leaking roof, gutters pulled away from the fascia, and a water heater on its last legs. Dad stood in the driveway watching us unload tools, his expression a mixture of gratitude and shame. "I should be doing this," he said quietly when I approached. "You taught me how to do all of this," I reminded him. "Now I am just putting those lessons to use." As we worked through the weekend, Dad found ways to contribute, despite his physical limitations, directing our efforts and sharing his knowledge of the house's quirks and needs. Mom kept us fueled with sandwiches and lemonade, seeming more animated than she had in months. By Sunday evening, the critical repairs were complete, and we gathered on the back patio for a simple cookout to celebrate our progress. As Jake and the others shared stories and laughter, I noticed my parents holding hands beneath the table, a small gesture of solidarity in the face of all they had endured. Later, as I was preparing to leave, Dad walked me to my car as had become our custom. "Your mother and I have been talking," he said, his voice stronger than it had been in months. "This house is too big for just the two of us now. Too many stairs. Too much maintenance." I nodded, having thought the same thing but unwilling to suggest it. "We are thinking of selling," he continued. "Finding a smaller place. Maybe a single-level home that would be easier to manage as we get older." "I think that is wise," I agreed. "I can help you look when you are ready." Dad cleared his throat, emotion making his voice rough. "There is something else. The way we treated you when Ashley came home. It was wrong. We have always loved you both equally, but we have not always shown it that way." I swallowed hard against the unexpected lump in my throat. "Dad, you do not have to." "Yes, I do," he insisted. "Your mother and I have had a lot of time to reflect on our mistakes. We were so enchanted by Ashley's apparent success that we failed to appreciate the real success right under our roof. A son who worked hard, helped his family, and had the courage to stand up for what was right, even when it was difficult." He placed a hand on my shoulder, his eyes holding mine with newfound respect. "We are proud of you, Carmelo. We always have been, but we did not say it enough. I hope you can forgive us for that." The simple acknowledgement so long desired, but never expected, left me momentarily speechless. I pulled my father into a hug, feeling the frailty in his frame, but also the strength in his embrace. "There is nothing to forgive," I said finally. "We are family." Over the next few months, my parents followed through on their decision to downsize. We found a comfortable ranch-style house in a quiet neighborhood, with a small yard that would be manageable for Dad, and a kitchen with the modern appliances Mom had always wanted, but never prioritized for herself. The sale of their larger home provided enough equity to purchase the new place outright, and still have a modest reserve for emergencies. Dad, determined to maintain his independence, found part-time consulting work advising young contractors on complex projects, his decades of experience valued despite his physical limitations. I continued to visit regularly, helping them settle into their new home and establish routines that accommodated their changing needs. My lease eventually ended, and I found a more affordable apartment closer to both work and my parents, making it easier to remain involved in their lives while maintaining my independence. 1 year after Ashley began serving her sentence, we visited her together for the first time. The prison visiting room was stark and institutional, a harsh setting for family reconciliation. Ashley, dressed in standard-issue clothing, her hair pulled back simply, looked older but somehow more authentic than she had in years of designer outfits and perfect makeup. "I did not think you would come," she admitted, her voice small but steady. "We are your family," Mom said simply, reaching for her daughter's hand across the table. The conversation was halting at first, all of us careful to avoid triggering painful topics. Gradually, though, something shifted. Ashley spoke openly about her therapy sessions and the realizations she had come to about her choices. "I was so afraid of disappointing you," she told our parents. "You always expected me to be exceptional, and when I married Troy and his business started struggling, I could not bear to admit failure. One compromise led to another, and then I was in too deep to find my way back." Dad's eyes filled with tears. "We never meant to put that pressure on you." "I know that now," Ashley said. "But I also know I made my own choices. Wrong choices." She turned to me, her expression stripped of the superiority that had characterized our interactions for years. "You tried to warn all of us, and I hated you for it, because it meant facing the truth. I am sorry, Carmelo. You deserved better from me, from all of us." It was not an instant healing, too much damage had been done for that, but it was a beginning. We established a routine of monthly visits, each one a little less strained than the last. Ashley used her business skills to teach financial literacy to fellow inmates, finding purpose in helping others avoid similar mistakes. 2 years into her 3-year sentence, Ashley was approved for early release to a halfway house based on her exemplary behavior and rehabilitation efforts. The day she walked out of prison, our family was waiting to drive her to her new temporary home. The halfway house was Spartan but clean, a necessary transition between incarceration and freedom. Ashley accepted the restrictions and monitoring with humility that would have been unimaginable in her previous life. "It is strange," she confessed during a family dinner at my apartment, now allowed out for brief approved activities. "I have less materially than I have ever had as an adult, but I feel more peaceful. Having everything does not mean much if you cannot trust it," I observed. She nodded thoughtfully. "I chased status and appearances for so long that I forgot what actually matters. It took losing everything to see what I had all along." 6 months later, Ashley completed her halfway house program and began the supervised release portion of her sentence. She moved into a modest apartment, found work as an administrative assistant at a nonprofit organization helping financial fraud victims, and committed to making regular restitution payments to those harmed by the scheme she had facilitated. Our family gathered to help her settle into her new place, parents bringing kitchenware and linens, me setting up a simple computer system for her budgeting and job searches. As we worked together, the dynamics between us shifted subtly. No longer was Ashley the golden child or the family disgrace. She was simply our sister and daughter, imperfect but trying. Later that evening, as we shared pizza on her living room floor, furniture still being a luxury she was working toward, Dad raised his paper cup of soda in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, his voice steady with hard-won wisdom, "and to the lessons that brought us here." Mom added softly, "To family not perfect, but together." Ashley wiped away tears. "To forgiveness I did not deserve, but am trying to earn." I raised my own cup, looking at these people who had hurt each other and healed each other in equal measure. To truth painful, but necessary. As our cups met in the center of our circle, I recognized what we had become. Not the perfect family Ashley had pretended to have, nor the fractured one that emerged in the scandal's aftermath, but something more authentic and resilient. A family that had faced its worst moments and chosen to rebuild with honesty as its foundation. 3 years after Ashley's release, our family gathered at my parents' home for a holiday dinner. Dad's consulting business had grown enough to require occasional help, which I provided on weekends. Mom had discovered a talent for creating ceramics, selling her pieces at local craft fairs. Ashley, having completed her supervised release with no violations, had been promoted to program coordinator at the nonprofit, using her experience to help others avoid similar pitfalls. As we shared a meal prepared together, the conversation flowed easily, punctuated by genuine laughter, a sound that had once seemed lost to us forever. We were not the same people who had sat around a similar table years ago when Troy and Ashley had first returned home. We were wiser, humbler, and ultimately stronger for having weathered the storm together. The greatest lesson I learned through all of this was not about financial fraud or family favoritism, but about the courage it takes to stand for truth, even when it costs you dearly. Sometimes protecting those you love means risking their anger, their rejection, even their hatred. Yet without truth as our foundation, we build our lives on shifting sand, vulnerable to collapse when the inevitable storms come. Our family had been broken and remade, not into something perfect, but into something real, a testament to the resilience of bonds tested by fire, and found to be, despite everything, unbreakable. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between loyalty and truth? between protecting someone's feelings and protecting them from harm. I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might find strength in our family's journey. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to stand for truth in your own lives, no matter how difficult that path may be.